It was only because I was married off in my elder sister's place that I became Xie Zhuojin's wife. That night, he lifted my bridal veil and studied me for a long while before a smile curved at the corner of his lips. Do not be afraid. From now on, you are my wife. I will build a good life with you. I will no longer dwell on those who have wronged me. Do you believe me? Second miss? I believed him. And so we lived in harmony, husband and wife, for the rest of my life. At my deathbed, surrounded by children and grandchildren, he held me in his arms, his tears scalding against my cheek. If I had sent you back to the Cui household that year, would you have sought death? My breath caught. I could not respond. Yet he had already come to his own conclusion, gently closing my eyes with an air of release. That is good, then. That is good. 40 years of marriage, and I long knew you were the stronger one. I will have you buried back in the Cui family plot. Xianzhen, were you not always longing for your parents' love? This is merely setting things right. It was my fault, letting Inger bear my children without name or status. And only then did I understand why I had been barren my entire life. Why he never took concubines, yet returned home later and later each night. My lifetime of happiness had been a farce. I died with my eyes wide open. When I opened them again, my elder sister was gripping my wrist, trying to shove me out of the wedding palanquin. This marriage was meant for me. Little sister, I will go myself. At that moment, the palanquin bearing me to the Xie household had only just left the Cui family gates. In full view of the crowded street, under the eyes of countless onlookers, she tore off my veil and my bridal shoes, then threw me down from the palanquin. As the crowd buzzed with murmurs, a young woman suddenly stepped forward and placed a veiled hat over my head. The gauze veil settled over my face. I bent to thank her, but she steadied me before I could bow. She crouched down and slipped a pair of new embroidered shoes onto my feet, saying with playful pride, "You'll have to return these to me tomorrow." I looked up without thinking and met a pair of worried eyes. Seeing that, I smiled lightly. Rest assured, miss, I will not seek death. Would you be willing to leave me your address? Once I've changed into proper clothes, I will come find you. She exhaled in relief, pressed a slip of paper into my hand, and only after looking back several times did she finally walk away. I turned and headed home. The sounds around me gradually grew louder, as if my hearing had suddenly returned. I raised a hand to shield my eyes from the sun and saw that the hand I lifted was fair and delicate. Beneath my feet, my steps were steady and brisk. I had actually returned to my coming-of-age year. As I pushed open the gates of the Cui household, a face, clear-featured and handsome, flashed unbidden before my eyes. He was smiling through tears. If there is a next life, I swear I will not let her pearl be cast before swine. To be honest, I never truly forgot your elder sister. And after all these years with you, I finally understand why your parents never took to you. At that memory, I halted. After a moment's hesitation, I stepped across the threshold. Jenner, what happened today? You have been wronged. At those words, something like a string plucked across my heart, a sharp pang, followed by a dull ache. It churned my insides and stirred up a fragile hope that wrapped around me like a bubble. Like a beautiful dream, it brought tears to my eyes for no reason at all. My parents had never favored me. In 2 lifetimes, this was the first time I heard them speak without taking my sister's side. I hadn't realized that one simple, objective sentence could move me to my very core. But just as I opened my mouth to say it was nothing, my father's eyes flickered with barely concealed apology. Your sister has always been spoiled. But at least now everything has been set right. No irreparable harm has been done. That marriage was meant for Inger anyway. You were the one who took her place. I will see that today's affair is kept quiet. My mother paused, then stepped forward and took my hands. Jenner has always been obedient and well-behaved. You never like to make trouble. About the substitution, you won't tell anyone, will you? I froze. The warmth that had enveloped me shattered in an instant. A chill crept over my entire body. They were kind to me, but they were far kinder to my sister. Every time they soothed me, it was always to protect her. I heard that the young master of the Senserate's family is also quite fine. It's just that he was just transferred to Xiaozhou this year. If you marry him, I'm afraid you'll have to move far away. Just then, I suddenly spoke. I will not marry. My father stopped. The sympathy in his brow vanished in an instant, replaced by the stern authority of a patriarch. Rebellious child, isn't it just because your sister married well that you refuse to be beneath her? You've been like this since you were small, always trying to outshine her at every turn. My mother bit her lip and stepped in front of me, but the words that came out were still meant to persuade me. That young Master Lu is a fine match as well. Cui Xianzhen, you don't need to compete with Inger in everything. You're sisters, why must you? I didn't want to hear any more. I cut her off. I will enter the palace for the imperial selection instead. Both of them froze. The smile on my lips was gentle, but my eyes were bitter. Father and mother want brother to rise swiftly in his career. I will work toward that goal. I paused, then added, but for now, you will listen to me. My voice was clear and soft, yet resolute. 4/10 of the income from the family's shops will be given to me. With that, I turned and walked back to my room. Consider it carefully, then come find me. Wait! The neighing of a horse cut through the air. The gates I had just closed were knocked open again. Xie Zhuojin, still in his groom's attire, appeared at the doorway, speaking urgently. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, I have something to say. My steps faltered, but I closed my chamber door all the faster. Xie Zhuojin had things he wanted to say. I did not wish to hear them anymore. I could no longer tell which of his words were true and which were false. It was easier to simply stop listening. In my past life, when I was married off in my sister's place, I already knew I could never deceive him. My elder sister had known him for years. The moment he lifted my veil, he would know the bride had been switched. So when the veil fell, I barely dared to lift my eyes. I knelt straight down and kowtowed. Forgive me, young Master Xie. I am not my sister. Xie Zhuojin stood before me, silent for a long time. I expected him to fly into a rage, to have me bound and sent back to the Cui household, to expose the Cui family's deception before all. Instead, he only asked, "Did you come willingly?" I shook my head. The night before the wedding, my sister had knelt before our parents, weeping that she already had a beloved and would never marry into the Xie family. My father smashed a teacup. My mother held her in her arms, sobbing as if she were a precious jewel. My brother stood to the side, pleading on her behalf. After a long night of commotion, they all turned to look at me. My mother took my hand, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Chinner, you and Inger look alike. Marry in her place, will you?" Of course I did not wish to. The Xie family wanted the talented poetess Cui Chunying. Xie Zhuojin wanted my sister. If I married in her place and the truth came out, the Cui family's reputation would be ruined and I would not escape unscathed. But my father said this was the debt I owed the Cui family for raising me all these years. My mother said my sister was too delicate to endure such hardship. I refused to agree. So they forced medicine down my throat. When I woke, I was already in my wedding gown, seated inside the palanquin bound for the Xie residence. I told all of this to Xie Zhuojin. By the end, I was sobbing uncontrollably. "Just send me back. Today, the Cui family has wronged you. I will not hold it against you." I was truly terrified. Terrified that he would send me back. My father would despise me. My mother would blame me for tarnishing my sister's reputation. My brother would think I had failed to make way for my sister and had let everything fall apart. But I was even more afraid of Xie Zhuojin himself. He was the foremost young gentleman of the capital, of noble birth, brilliant in learning, renowned for his talent. How could someone like him, tricked into a false marriage, possibly let me off easily? Unexpectedly, he bent down and helped me to my feet. "Do not be afraid." I stared at him, dazed. He wiped away my tears, his voice calm. "Now that we have bowed to heaven and earth, you are my wife. Your sister did not wish to marry me. She is the one who wronged me. I will no longer dwell on those who have wronged me." He paused, then added, "From now on, I will build a good life with you. Do you believe me, second miss? I believed him, because I had never heard such words before. I too was a daughter of the Cui family, yet I had never been able to compare with my sister. The year my sister was born, my father passed the imperial examinations. Overjoyed, he planted a crabapple tree in the courtyard, declaring that when it bloomed, his precious pearl of a daughter would have come of age. When I was born, my father was away on official business in another province. When he returned, he glanced at me once and declared that I was not as comely as my elder sister, and therefore did not need to be raised with such indulgence. My sister's courtyard was spacious and bright, and she received new clothes every season. I lived in the most remote little yard, often lacking even enough charcoal for warmth in winter. On my sister's birthday, my father would invite a troupe of performers into the residence. My mother would comb her hair with her own hands. My brother would return from his travels with a trunk full of gifts. My birthday came shortly after hers. If my mother remembered, she would have the kitchen make a bowl of long-life noodles. If she forgot, the day passed like any other. I had cried, made scenes, begged, but my father called me inconsiderate. My mother said I always had to compete with my sister. My brother would pat my head and tell me to stop making trouble. Eventually, I stopped asking for anything at all, until I entered the Xie household. In the first year of our marriage, Xie Zhuojin noticed that I rarely used my monthly allowance to buy jewelry. So he took me out to the markets and asked me what I liked. Instinctively, I shook my head and said I liked nothing. He sighed, and then took me on a tour of every shop in Chang'an. A hairpin I glanced at twice, he bought it without hesitation. A bolt of red satin I paused to admire outside an embroidery shop, he had it delivered to our residence that same day. Powder, balm, jade bangles, and pearl eardrops I had never even dared to dream of, they filled the table one by one. I was flustered. These are too expensive. Xie Zhuojin placed the key to the storeroom in my palm, his expression serious. Xianzhen, you deserve these things. You do not have to be so sensible. Those words alone made my eyes sting with tears. So it turned out I was allowed to be willful. Liking pretty clothes was not a flaw. Eating an extra piece of pastry would not earn me a scolding for gluttony. I was afraid of thunder, he stayed by my side all night. I caught a chill, he fed me medicine by my bedside himself. In winter, my hands and feet were always cold. He would tuck a warm jade stone into my blankets, then freeze in his study all night. My mother-in-law disliked me. She considered me a fisheye passing for a pearl, unworthy of being the mistress of the household. She punished me by making me kneel in the ancestral hall, but Xie Zhuojin shielded me, and after we returned, he knelt beside me. His mother was so furious she turned pale, but he refused to rise. Mother, Xianzhen is my wife. If you find fault in her, then your son shares that fault. I had never been defended so steadfastly by anyone in my life. So I thought, even if the whole world despised me, as long as Xie Zhuojin loved me, that was enough. Later, he even took me to the imperial spring banquet. Before the feast was over, the tyrant emperor summoned us to his study. The palace doors closed behind us. The emperor sat above, his gaze resting on me, never straying. Unconsciously, I shrank behind Xie Zhuojin. He did not turn around, but he shifted one step to the side, shielding me completely. The emperor smiled. Xie Zhuojin, I have heard you possess the talent of a chief minister, and yet you remain a mere historiographer. Is that not a waste of your abilities? Xie Zhuojin bowed. Your subject's experience is shallow. I dare not covet high office. But the emperor pointed at me. Offer her to me. Tomorrow, you shall enter the secretariat. My entire body went rigid. Everyone in the court knew that the tyrant delighted in seizing the wives of his officials. Few of the women who fell into his hands survived more than a year. I was terrified of dying. Yet I also knew that Xie Zhuojin had studied for years with the dream of one day becoming a chancellor. If he nodded, everything he had ever wanted would be within his grasp. I even considered offering myself willingly. At least then he would not have to struggle. But Xie Zhuojin knelt. Your Majesty, she is your subject's lawful wife. The emperor's smile faded. Just the daughter of a minor official. If you cannot bear to part with her, I will not force you. But if you walk out that door today, you will remain a historiographer for the rest of your days. Xie Zhuojin did not hesitate. Your subject will not trade her. After we left the study, I wept for a long time. I asked if he regretted his choice. He wiped my tears away. If prosperity requires trading my wife, I would rather have none of it. After that, he was indeed never promoted. His former classmates entered the 6 ministries one by one. Those who had once lagged behind him gradually surpassed him. He alone remained in the Historiography Institute, copying old records and compiling chronicles of previous dynasties. Everyone pitied him. I felt I owed him everything. I believed he had cut short his own path to success in order to protect me. So I told myself, since he could give up his future for me, I would give everything I had to reclaim what he had lost. The year I miscarried, I had already been married to Xie Zhuojin for many years. I had been 3 months pregnant. Xie Zhuojin was overjoyed. He came home every day and sat by my side for a long time. Though the child had not yet stirred, he would press his palm against my belly and smile. This is our child. I asked whom he hoped the child would resemble. He said me. Like you, tender-hearted. Not like me. I did not understand at the time. I only felt happy, because this was our child. My very first blood relative of my own. By then, my elder sister had been missing for quite some time. The Cui family told the world that, ashamed of having reneged on her marriage, she had voluntarily entered a nunnery and would never see outsiders again. I had tried to visit her several times, but my mother stopped me, saying my sister refused to see me because she believed I had stolen her marriage. I carried that guilt with me always. Every New Year's and festival, I prepared clothes, silver, and pastries to send to the nunnery. Only on my deathbed did I learn that those things never reached the nunnery. They were all delivered to a villa outside the city. That was where Cui Chunying lived. After the palanquin left the Cui household that day, she soon discovered that her so-called beloved had no intention of marrying her. So she sought out my husband, weeping that she had only been afraid, that she had never truly refused to marry him. Xie Zhuojin, still carrying a flame for old times, kept her in that villa outside the city. By day, he was my loving husband. After nightfall, he claimed he was staying late at the institute and went to her. Unfortunately, I knew nothing of this. I naively believed I was his one and only love. Then one night, he came home very late, reeking of wine. My belly was uncomfortable. I asked him to sleep in the study, but he held me tightly. Sensing something wrong, I kept pushing him away. Zhuojin, I am with child. He did not stop. I wept and begged him, reminding him again and again to think of the baby. But he seemed truly drunk, he could not hear me. That night, the pain was unbearable. By dawn, the bedding was soaked in blood. I lost the child. The physician said the damage was too severe. It would likely be very difficult for me to conceive again. After I woke, I did not speak for days. Xie Zhuojin knelt by my bedside. He slapped himself hard across the face, weeping as he apologized. I was drunk. Xianzhen, I killed our child. He did not eat, did not sleep. He stayed by my side for many days. I fell ill, and he grew thin along with me. Everyone said he had lost a child too, and his grief was no less than mine. My mother-in-law urged him to take a concubine. He refused in front of the entire household. In this life, I will have only Xianzhen as my wife. Children or no children, it does not matter. All of Chang'an praised his devotion. I was moved. I even believed that it was my own failure to bear him children that had let him down. From then on, I devoted myself even more diligently to managing the Xie household. Since he could not rise in his career, I took it upon myself to cultivate relationships with the wives of influential officials. I had never enjoyed banquets, nor was I skilled at social maneuvering. But for his future, I forced myself to learn. Which matriarch loved opera? Which lady suffered from chronic headaches? Which official was urgently seeking to marry off his son? I made note of it all. I thought that as long as I worked hard enough, I could pave a new path for him. But Xie Zhuojin had never wanted to rise. The Historiography Institute was quiet and inconspicuous. Only by staying there could he slip out of the city every day to be with Cui Chunying. Later, Cui Chunying bore him a son and a daughter. When the children were old enough, they were brought into the Xie household. Xie Zhuojin said they were orphans entrusted to him by an old friend. I pitied them for losing their parents so young. I treated them better than I would my own children. I taught them to read, arranged their marriages, and even gave them my own dowry. On my deathbed, they knelt before me, calling me mother. I thought that although I had no children of my own, at least I was surrounded by descendants. Until Xie Zhuojin held me and spoke the truth. Xianzhen. They are my children with Inger. My breath stopped. Xie Zhuojin was still crying. He said he had never meant to betray me, but that night he had drunk too much, and Cui Chunying became pregnant. He feared that if I bore a child, hers would never see the light of day. So he deliberately drank, deliberately caused me to miscarry. I stared at him. Suddenly I remembered what had happened in the emperor's study. I asked him if he had never loved me, why he hadn't offered me to the emperor back then. Xie Zhuojin was silent for a long time. Finally, he whispered in my ear, "The emperor was cruel. If you entered the palace, you would not survive many years. If you died, the Cui family would force me to marry Inger. She is too delicate, and she cannot manage a household. The Xie family's affairs, social obligations, they all require you." So that was it. He had not been reluctant to part with me. I was simply useful. He needed a capable and virtuous wife to serve his parents, manage the household, cultivate connections, and raise his children with the woman he truly loved. Everything I had thought was love was all calculation. I wanted to ask why he had done this to me, but my throat could no longer make a sound. Xie Zhuojin closed my eyes and continued murmuring to himself, "If I had sent you back to the Cui household that year, would you have sought death? Probably not." He paused, then said with certainty, "You are stronger than Inger." A single crimson teardrop of blood fell from the corner of my eye. I died with my eyes still open. The silence outside the door lasted only a moment. Xie Zhuojin knocked again, his voice gentle but urgent. "Xianzhen, open the door." I did not move. His voice softened further. "I know you intend to enter the imperial selection. The new emperor is violent and capricious. Few women who enter the palace meet a good end. You cannot go." I looked down and smiled. In the next moment, the door was forced open. Xie Zhuojin was still wearing his wedding robes. When he saw me, relief was visible on his face. "I have heard what happened today. Inger was willful, but she has already married into the Xie family. The position of principal wife can only be hers." I looked up at him and smiled. "So?" He paused, as though he had just thought of the perfect solution. "Your sister is too childlike. She doesn't understand those intricate, twisty schemes. I can save you. Become my secondary wife. Then you won't have to marry the tyrant." I laughed in disbelief. After a long moment, I finally spoke. "Does my sister know about this?" Xie Zhuojin frowned. "She is simple by nature. There is no need to tell her yet. Once you enter the household, I will gently persuade her." I nodded slowly. "So young Master Xie's idea of saving me is for me to enter the Xie household in secret and manage it on my sister's behalf, without her knowledge." His expression shifted slightly. "Xianzhen, that is not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" I cut him off. "You cannot bear to let my sister suffer, so you let me suffer instead. You are afraid she cannot manage the Xie household, so you have me manage it. And when she bears children, shall I raise them for her too?" Xie Zhuojin stood frozen. My smile widened. "Young Master Xie, I refuse." He seemed not to have expected my answer. After a moment, his tone grew heavier. "Entering the palace is no joke. You will die. That is none of young Master Xie's concern." I rose and opened the door wide. "Please leave." But Xie Zhuojin suddenly gripped my wrist. "Cui Xianzhen." I turned to look at him. A flicker of panic crossed his eyes, as though he truly feared I would walk through the palace gates and never look back. "Why must you be so obstinate?" Becoming a secondary wife may be a slight, but I will protect you. Besides, you have always been stronger than Inger. My movements stopped abruptly. He had said those very words in my past life. I slowly raised my head, meeting Xie Zhuojin's suddenly frozen gaze. So, I was not the only one who had been reborn. Just as I was considering how to respond, hurried footsteps sounded from outside the courtyard. A servant from the Xie household, drenched in sweat, dropped heavily to his knees at the door. Master, please come back at once. The madam is causing a scene. She smashed the nuptial wine. She says if you do not return immediately, she will dash her head against the wedding hall pillar. Xie Zhuojin's brow tightened. His grip on my wrist loosened. He turned back to me, his tone conciliatory. Inger is hot-tempered. Let us leave it here for today. I will go back first. Give what I said some thought. I did not answer. As he turned to leave, his gaze suddenly fell upon the window. A brilliant red wedding gown lay there, embroidered with a golden phoenix. Its tail feathers spread wide, gleaming so brightly it seemed to occupy the entire hem. Xie Zhuojin stared for a moment. Then he smiled, as though he had finally seen through my pretended anger. He looked greatly relieved. I knew you were only sulking. Enough. Now, stop being cross. Embroider your gown well and wait for me to come and marry you properly. He paused, magnanimous. Though you shall be only a secondary wife, I will still hold a wedding ceremony for you. You have my word, I will not let you suffer. With that, he hurried off, without even waiting for my reply. I stood there, and after a long moment, I laughed out loud. What generosity, young Master Xie. Pity, that wedding gown was not embroidered for him. It had been sent by the eunuch from the palace. Along with it came a secret edict. His Majesty had exempted me from the selection ceremony. I was to enter the palace in half a month. My title and rank were not yet set, but my name had been entered into the imperial registry. I was going to enter the palace. I lowered my gaze to the phoenix spreading its wings as if about to take flight, and a question stirred in my mind. In my past life, the tyrant had only taken notice of me after the spring banquet. Why was he calling me to the palace so much earlier this time? But I did not dwell on it, and I had no intention of turning back. The Cui family did not value me. Xie Zhuojin only sought to use me. Everyone in this world wanted to choose a path for me. No one ever asked where I wanted to go. So I would go forward on my own. What if he was a tyrant? What if the harem was a den of snakes? Everyone dies eventually. Since I would never be valued wherever I went, I might as well go to the highest place. Every direction was forward. My father deliberated through the night. In the end, faced with the secret edict, he reluctantly agreed to my terms. 4/10 of the family shops. Profits were to be mine. In addition, several shops in the capital were transferred to my sole disposal. When my mother handed me the storeroom keys, she hesitated. Chinner, His Majesty treats you specially. After you enter the palace, remember to look after your brother. He has always been good to you. I lowered my head and accepted the keys. Saying yes, she immediately exhaled in relief. As if these things were not my dowry, but a transaction the Cui family was investing in the palace. I smiled bitterly to myself. She had finally seen my worth. Yet not a single word about the dangers I would face in the palace. After I received the money, I replaced every servant in my courtyard. I secretly had medicinal herbs, acupuncture needles, and protective armor purchased. The inner palace was treacherous. Though I had never entered it in my past life, I had interacted with the wives of many officials over the years and knew something of its ways. I bribed an elderly lady-in-waiting and had her draw me detailed maps of the palace, the masters, the maids, the eunuchs, and all the various passages. I gave her a large sum of silver and also cleared her son's gambling debts. I did not know how much of her information was reliable, but at least it was something to go on. My mother praised me for being thorough, for the first time. My father personally came to ask what else I needed, and he would have it arranged. My brother even sent me a maidservant skilled in martial arts to take with me into the palace. She will protect you. His tone was stiff and awkward, as if he was not used to being kind to me. I found it amusing. All I had ever wanted was a bowl of plain noodles on my birthday, and they had resented me for asking. Now, before I had even entered the palace, 16 years of lost affection had been restored in full. Then came the day of Cui Chunying's return visit to her family. A feast was laid in the main hall. My father, my brother, and Xie Zhuojin drank and laughed together, toasting one another as if the ugly business of the bride swap had never happened. I avoided the gathering, partly to keep out of trouble, partly because the very sight of them made me sick. I was checking the trunks I would take to the palace when Cui Chunying found me. She was dressed in a newlywed's red gown, her hair heavy with jewels, her coiffure already that of a married woman. "Are you still angry with me, little sister?" I did not stop what I was doing, nor did I answer. She smiled again. That day, I was in the wrong. But when it comes to marriage, such things cannot be forced. Zhuojin has me in his heart. If I had stepped aside, it would have harmed all three of us. She looked at me and sighed softly. I heard he came to see you. Zhuojin is kind-hearted. He said he is willing to offer you the position of secondary wife, so you may escape a bitter fate. If you do enter the Xie household, I will treat you well. Her words were gentle, as if she were being magnanimous, as if she had never run away to elope. I curved my lips. I hope that when we meet again, you will still be able to look down on me from such heights. Cui Chunying's smile vanished. She could no longer maintain the act. Her mask fell away, and beneath it was the familiar, sharp-toothed face I knew. Cui Xianzhen, do not be so ungrateful. I am the principal wife. After all, you would be nothing more than a secondary wife. What was true at home remains true in the Xie household. Do you think mother and father and brother will take your side? She said smugly. They will always love me best. I slowly rose to my feet and spoke with certainty. You are afraid I will steal Xie Zhuojin's affection from you. But you still want me to marry in. I suspect it is because you cannot manage the Xie household and need someone to clean up your mess. Cui Chunying raised her hand to strike me, but I was faster. I caught her wrist and slapped her across the face in return. The sound was crisp and clear. The courtyard fell silent. Xie Zhuojin rushed over at the noise. Seeing Cui Chunying holding her cheek, he immediately stepped in front of her and rounded on me. Xianzhen, you have gone too far. I looked at him, amused. She tried to hit me. I hit her back. What is excessive about that? Xie Zhuojin frowned. Inger is already my wife. If you enter the Xie household someday, you should respect her. But I understand you have grievances. I will overlook the slap today. His tone was forgiving, as if he were giving a wayward child a second chance. I almost laughed. I raised my hand and slapped him across the face too. Xie Zhuojin's head snapped to the side. The room went utterly silent. Finally quiet. I smiled with satisfaction. You may take issue with it now. In my past life, he had only confessed on my deathbed. I had no chance to retaliate. Now, at last, I had let out half of that pent-up anger. Cui Chunying let out a shriek and ran sobbing into the main hall. Father! Mother! My sister has gone mad. She hit me, and she dared to strike her brother-in-law as well. My father rose to his feet and looked at me, his expression complicated. In the past, whenever my sister cried, he would scold me first. But this time, he looked at me, then at the gift registry on the table, and swallowed his anger. A few squabbles between sisters, nothing more. Why are you making such a scene, Inger? My mother also hurried to intercede. Inger, today is your return visit, a fine day. Do not make a spectacle of yourself. I watched from the side, curious. So this was how favoritism looked. But I did not want such favoritism anymore. Having lived a second life, I no longer wished to beg anyone to love me. What I wanted was that someday, whether I was useful or not, no one would dare to trample on me again. Her tears hung on her cheeks, about to fall but not quite. Her expression was one of wounded disbelief. Cui Chunying had never expected that the people who had protected her all her life would change their tune a mere 3 days after her marriage. The return visit banquet ended in discord. As Xie Zhuojin left, he looked back at me for a long time and suddenly smiled. Jenner, you have gone to great lengths to get my attention. I could not be bothered to waste more words on him. I turned and went back to my room. I was about to enter the palace. But there was one thing I had not yet done. I still owed someone a pair of embroidered shoes and a veiled hat. The address on the slip of paper was on Sephora Flower Lane, south of the city. I sent servants ahead with gifts. But the usually lively lane was eerily silent. At the end, the gate of a courtyard stood half open, blood soaked the threshold. My heart sank. I pushed the door open. Inside the yard, more than a dozen bodies lay strewn about. The young woman who had placed the veiled hat on me that day stood beneath the eaves, a broken blade in her hand. It was already chipped and blunted. She was covered in blood, shielding a young child behind her. The leader of the attackers laughed. The Wen family has hidden all these years. At last, we have found you. The young woman's voice trembled, but she did not retreat a step. My parents are already dead. What more do you want? The man did not answer. He raised his blade and lunged. My guards rushed forward ahead of me. In the flash of steel and shadows, the young woman stared at me in shock, as if she could not believe it was me. After all, they were the Imperial Guards. The attackers in black were no match. Soon, they were routed. I walked over and steadied her, patting her arm reassuringly. As promised, I came to return the favor. She opened her mouth, and suddenly her tears fell. I am the only one left of my family. I looked down. The child behind her had long since stopped breathing. She had tied him to her back with a sash, keeping him upright. She had guarded the bodies of her entire household, holding on until now. I called for the authorities and had the Wen family's remains properly interred. But several of the killers had escaped. When Yuan knelt before the funeral altar, not closing her eyes all night. At dawn, she found me and knelt straight down. Miss, you saved my life. My life is yours. I looked at the wounds on her hands. Miss Wen, I am about to enter the palace. It may not be safer there than outside. When Yuan raised her head, tears still wet on her face. I have no home left. I do not even know where I should go. I was silent for a moment, then pulled her up from the ground. If you trust me, come with me. Someday, when you have avenged your family, you may go wherever you wish. When Yuan gripped my hand tightly and could not speak for a long time. Soon, the palace gates opened wide. I entered, with her beside me. A small palanquin carried me through the main gate directly to the emperor's bedchamber. The news set the entire court, front and rear palaces alike, into an uproar. Everyone said the new emperor had been bewitched by beauty. Before even laying eyes on me, he granted me the unprecedented honor of residing in the imperial bedchamber. I was a femme fatale, a harbinger of the dynasty's ruin. I thought His Majesty might show some restraint, but the tyrant only clapped his hands and laughed when he heard. They are cursing me, good. Then let this edict go forth. Tonight, this femme fatale shall attend my bed. When I entered the hall, when Yuan's hand was already on the soft whip at her waist. Her sword and dagger had been confiscated, but the whip remained. The emperor had a reputation for cruelty. Before entering the palace, she had said that if my life was in danger, she would die trying to take the tyrant with her. I shook my head at her. The hall doors closed. Layer upon layer of attendants withdrew. The tyrant sat on the couch, pointed at his own robe, and did not even bother with formalities. Femme fatale, are you? Come and undress me. I walked over and loosened his dragon robe. As the garment fell open, I suddenly stopped. The white binding wrapped tight around his chest. The marks of years of constriction were visible across his abdomen. My hand paused. Instinctively, I reached out and touched them. My lips parted, but no words came. Before I could ask, the tyrant preempted me. You are a reborn soul. My entire body went rigid. As if my spirit had been snatched away, I stood frozen, unsure how to react. She slowly removed her crown and let her hair fall loose. Indifferent. In your past life, you suffered much injustice. This time, old scores and new grudges alike, I will settle them all for you. I stared at her. After a long while, I asked, why? Her eyes reddened. The tyrant who had been cursing and threatening just moments ago now wept first. Because I want to go home. The national astrologer said that only a reborn soul can help me return. She wiped her face roughly, and her voice changed. Oh, my name is Jiang Mingyue. I was stunned. She seemed to have opened a floodgate, speaking freely of her past. She said she was not from this place. In her homeland, women could study, could hold office, and no one could force them to marry. On the streets, there were iron carriages that moved on their own, and iron birds in the sky that could carry people through the air. Across mountains and oceans, you could hear your loved ones' voices in an instant. She said the winters there were warm indoors. Everywhere there were lights at night. If a woman was wronged, she could bring her grievance to the authorities without being asked first what she had been wearing. I listened, entranced, and could not help asking, "Over there, can women also be emperors?" Jiang Mingyue laughed. "Over there are no more emperors." She lifted her gaze to the window, lost in memory. Bright moon. Her voice was resolute and gentle, and I found myself trusting her. "You are not a cruel person, so why does everyone call you a tyrant?" At this, Jiang Mingyue laughed so hard tears nearly spilled from her eyes. "After I ascended the throne, I established schools for women and reformed the laws. I simply upheld the natural rights of women, and I became a tyrant." She paused, tapping her fingers idly on the table. "I allowed women to establish their own households, inherit property, and remarry as widows. The court officials said I was destroying the ancestral order. I ordered investigations into clans that drove daughters-in-law to their deaths, and executed a few local gentry who had used chastity memorial arches to cover up murder. They said I was bloodthirsty. I also abolished the old law that drowned women for adultery and made the punishment equal for both sexes." She laughed again, unrestrained and pleased. That really got under their skin. I stared at her, entranced. Jiang Mingyue remained casual, as if she were not describing matters that could overturn the entire court. "They called me a hen that crows at dawn, said women should have no part in governance. So I threw their memorials back in their faces and asked them, if women have no place in governance, then why are they so comfortable spending the tax silver women pay? They said women are naturally weak and cannot bear heavy burdens. So I opened martial examinations and established female military units, sending them to the borders to fight. After the women's units won merit, they said I was deliberately elevating women to disrupt the natural order." She laughed until her eyes curved. "You see, they are not afraid of me being cruel. They are afraid of those who once knelt standing up." The candlelight flickered gently within the hall. She sat on the dragon couch, hair unbound, still carrying a trace of frailty. Yet her words rang with unshakable resolve. "I have killed people. I have also confiscated the property of many corrupt officials. Those who embezzled disaster relief, abducted women, used the law to hide their crimes. I love killing them." She paused, her tone lightening considerably. "As for those who merely curse me, I can't be bothered to pay them any mind." She poured me a cup of hot tea, her voice suddenly soft. "The louder they curse, the more it proves I have struck at their very lifeblood." I took the teacup. Its warmth seeped into my palm. Jiang Mingyue looked at me. "Xianzhen, I cannot be a sage. I can only make the wicked fear me, and let the weak dare to live. An emperor like that, if they want to call me a tyrant, let them." She smiled. "History is written by the living. If I am true to myself, posterity will judge as it will. I am but a lone soul from another world." Her voice was clear, yet lonely. She turned her back to me and looked up, wiping her tears. "If I could truly change others, fates and save those who suffer, my teacher would surely be proud of me." I took her hand from behind. He surely would be. She seemed to console herself with that thought. In an instant, she turned, took my hands, and said with renewed enthusiasm, "By the way, you and I, a femme fatale and a tyrant, we're a perfect match." I could not help but smile. It was the first time since my rebirth that I had laughed so freely. The bright moon hung high above, lighting my path and lighting the way for every woman in this world. Within days of entering the palace, I was named noble consort. Not long after, an edict of Empress investiture landed on the desks of every official in the court. A crowd of ministers knelt outside the palace gates in protest. Jiang Mingyue sat in the hall, eating grapes, utterly unconcerned. If they want to kneel, let them. Their knees aren't mine, and I don't feel the pain. I took the grapes she offered and began to wield my borrowed authority. In my first act as Empress, I ordered the Xie household sealed and investigated, Xie Zhuojin called to answer for his crimes. In my past life, I had managed the Xie family for many years. I knew their accounts inside and out. The illegal seizure of sacrificial lands, the concealment of stolen goods, the usurious lending. They followed the evidence I provided. It was irrefutable. Within half a day, the Xie household was raided. After Xie Zhuojin was imprisoned, Cui Chunying came to the palace to plead for mercy. She had heard that the empress was virtuous, so she knelt outside the hall for a long time, begging only that I show leniency. Over and over, she insisted that Xie Zhuojin was innocent, that the Xie family were loyal subjects. I simply gestured to Wen Yuan, let her in. But when she entered the hall and looked up, she was not pleased. All the color drained from her face. Her voice was near shrieking. It's you! I sat high above, looking down at her. Cui family daughter, when you see the empress, why do you not kneel? Her legs buckled, and she collapsed heavily to the ground. Speak your grievance. Then, Cui Chunying, for once, abandoned her arrogance. Stammering, she presented her case. For nearly an hour, she went in circles, repeating the same arguments. I was in no hurry. When she finished, I asked calmly, you are pregnant. Does Xie Zhuojin know? Cui Chunying's head snapped up. I smiled. I believe it would be better for a child to be raised with its own father. Her face went completely white. Then, suddenly, she laughed triumphantly. Her Majesty the Empress is jealous. Is she? You entered the palace, won His Majesty's favor, yet you still cannot forget Zhuojin. Cui Xianzhen, how pitiful you are. I looked at her calmly. I had a dream. In it, Xie Zhuojin kept a mistress, and that mistress was my elder sister. In the dream, my sister bore his children without name or status, and then sent them to me, to raise as my own. Cui Chunying's laughter froze. She deliberately looked away, but still cried out loudly, you lie. Xie Lang loves me most. How could he bear to make me a mistress? Yet the child in your womb now is not his. One soft sentence rendered her speechless. She lunged at me. Wen Yuan kicked her back into the middle of the hall. Just then, His Majesty stepped out from behind the folding screen, wearing the mask of the tyrant once more. Since Madame Xie is so devoted, I will see that your wish is granted. Xie Zhuojin is stripped of his titles and sent to the Western Mountain Imperial Temple to copy sutras and compile history. Cui Chunying, you will be tonsured and cultivate virtue at the temple, praying for the child in your womb. She paused, and laughed again. Together, husband and wife, growing old together. I am not separating a pair of mandarin ducks. Cui Chunying froze, then crumpled to the ground. I did not look at her again. The two people who had held me captive in my past life, finally, they left the capital together. But this time, no one was there to clean up their mess. I grew more adept at wielding my borrowed authority. On my own initiative, I sent out the Emperor's Dragon Guard. Within days, the killers of the Wen family were brought to justice. A bounty was posted in the underworld. Within a few days, heads were delivered to the palace. I was prepared to release Wen Yuan from service, but she knelt before me, saying she wished to stay by my side forever. So I said no more. Old scores settled, all debts paid. I thought I would feel lighter, but instead, I suddenly felt at a loss. Just then, Jiang Mingyue announced that she would teach me to be emperor. I thought she was joking, but she truly had memorials moved into my bedchamber. First, she taught me to read people. Who was truly loyal? Who merely pretended? Whose mouth spoke of the state while his heart counted his own landholdings? Then she taught me to read taxes, military affairs, and river works. My head spun. She took my hand and circled a few points on a memorial. Don't be fooled by long essays. Read between the lines. What are they trying to hide? I got a headache. She tapped my hand with her brush. You managed an entire Xie household in your past life. And you kept up with all those noble ladies. Why can't you manage the empire? A family and a state are no different. It's all just people, fighting for money, power, and pride. I thought about it, and she had a point. I did not want to disappoint my good teacher, so I applied myself with even greater diligence. Whenever I struggled, she would tell me stories about her world's history. There was a woman named Wu Zhao. Her name meant the sun and moon above the sky. She ascended the throne as a woman, opened the imperial examinations, and was a role model for countless girls. Role model? I asked. Jiang Mingyue placed a vermilion brush in my hand. It means someone all women admire and aspire to be. She paused. Be like her. Be a wise ruler. I was stunned for a long time. I pointed at myself. Me? She laughed and pinched my cheek. Of course. You. Before I leave, I will teach you everything. I would not trust this empire to anyone else. I finally had to ask. Why me? I hesitated, then forced myself to continue. That day when Cui Chunying came, you were there too. It was obvious she also has memories from her past life, and Xie Zhuojin probably does as well. Even if we disregard those wretches, surely there are many others who have been reborn. There is no reason you must choose me, because you saved me. She touched my cheek, her voice firm. It can only be you, Cui Xianzhen. To hell with imperial bloodlines. You saved me, it has to be you. She had not grown up in the palace. The late emperor feared her birth mother, so she was raised in a remote dwelling outside the capital. Unattended, bullied by everyone. She had the soul of an adult but was trapped in a child's body. When she fought back too fiercely, she was beaten all the harder. The other children mocked her for not being manly enough. They called her a half-breed and took her food to feed to the dogs. When she could not fight the dogs for her scraps, she went hungry. One time, she had not eaten for 3 days and collapsed in the back alley of the Cui mansion. I climbed over the wall and offered her a piece of osmanthus cake from my pocket. Later, I often stole food for her. I even stole my brother's old cloak. That was in the past life. And in this one too. Jiang Mingyue's eyes curved. Every time, you saved me. I suppose that means it is fate. I stood there, stunned. I only remembered a thin, silent child in the back alley, always eating quickly. And then one day, she was gone. It turned out she had imperial blood after all, biding her time for years, until she raised an army and took the throne. Back then, she said, taking my hand, I swore, if ever I gained power, I would give the girl who fed me a lifetime of peace. But in your past life, by the time I found you, it was too late. My nose stung with tears. She wiped them away. At least this time. I am in time. After that, I followed her to court every day. At first, I sat behind a screen. Later, disaster relief, military funds, the salt monopoly. She had me make every decision first. I was afraid of making mistakes. She said, if you are wrong, fix it. There is still time. The first time I handled the flooding in Hedong, I uncovered a deficit in the state granaries and implicated more than 10 officials. The relief funds arrived in time. Hedong did not fall into chaos. When Jiang Mingyue read the report, she said only one thing, well done. I held that piece of paper, unable to put it down for half a day. In the past, when Xie Zhuojin praised me, it was so I would work harder for him. When my parents praised me, it was because I was useful to my brother. But when Jiang Mingyue said it was good, it was simply because I had done well. When Yuan started handling matters with me, too, she was bold, meticulous, and skilled in martial arts. When maidservants were bullied, she stood up for them. When a women's school was vandalized, she led a team to arrest the perpetrators. Gradually, everyone came to know there was an officer when by the Empress's side. She followed only the law, sparing no one, a woman of iron. Everything flourished. Until, one morning at court, the tyrant suddenly coughed up blood and collapsed right there at the morning audience. The imperial physicians knelt in a circle. Only then was I forced to learn she had long been at death's door. Jiang Mingyue was a soul from another world. Staying these many years was already an act against fate. When she woke, her face was as pale as gold leaf. Yet she was still joking. There, stop crying. My greatest wish is to go home. I am not dying. I am going home. So when I leave, you need not grieve. She took my hand. Her palm was already cold. And besides, you will carry on my work, won't you? I knelt by her couch, tears falling endlessly. She wiped them away. If I have a regret, there is truly one. Her breath grew weaker, but she continued. I wanted you to ascend the throne as a woman, openly, fully. I froze. She went on. When I arrived, the world was broken. I schemed for years. Yet still I could not fulfill that wish. They would not accept a woman on the throne. I fought so hard, and still, I could only wear a man's dragon robe. She caught her breath and said with unshakable conviction, but why not? In my world, there is already proof. Only a woman's bloodline truly endures. What are men, compared to that? I laughed through my tears. She laughed with me. Finally, she solemnly placed the imperial jade seal in my hands. Cui Xianzhen, show me what the world will become when a woman stands at the highest place. Her voice faded. Her eyes closed softly. Outside the window, the bright moon hung high. The great Liang had lost its moon. But my bright moon, she had finally gone home. After Jiang Mingyue passed, the officials rebelled. They said a woman could not be emperor. They said I came from an inner chamber, unworthy of ruling the realm. I held the jade seal and walked up to the golden hall. When Yuan stood behind me, blade in hand, outside the hall where the women's army Jiang Mingyue had left behind, I looked down at the kneeling ministers. I drew my sword and cut off the head of the most vocal among them. His eyes remained wide open in death. I smiled and asked only one question. Here is the late emperor's final edict. Who objects? No one dared answer. Because every person beyond the door was mine. I put on the dragon robe Jiang Mingyue had left behind and walked before the assembled court. She told me to see what the world would become when a woman stands at the highest place. I will see it for her. On the day of my enthronement, the Cui family knelt at the foot of the dais. My father wept. My mother prostrated herself and called me Your Majesty. I did not look at them. From the Western Mountain Temple, Xie Zhuojin sent a letter written in blood, saying he had wronged me in the past life and was willing to die in this one. I wrote only 4 words in reply, then die quickly. I had forgotten, my words were now gold. Soon, news of his death reached me. I shrugged and did not even lift my head. The past had scattered. I had more important things to do. Later, I opened civil examinations for women, established female officials, and allowed women to inherit titles, establish households, and enter government service. Old laws were abolished. Schools for women spread across the land. When Yuan took charge of the penal system, bearing the golden seal and the imperial command, the entire court called her Officer Wen. She still stands beside me, as she did when she placed that pair of embroidered shoes on my feet all those years ago. Together, shoulder to shoulder. But this time, no one dares mock us. Years later, I stood atop the palace walls. Below, Chang'an blazed with 10,000 lanterns. Women reading, doing business, engaging in politics, riding out of the city gates. These were ordinary sights now. I looked up at the moon, my voice catching. Bright moon, can you see this? The wind blew across 10,000 miles. No one answered. But I know she can see it. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and support my channel. Let me know in the comments what kind of stories you would like to see. Feel free to check out my other videos as well, they have some great stories too.